Welcome to Citrin Cooperman's Corner Chats. I'm Peter Katz of Westfair Communications, publisher of the Westchester County Business Journal, Fairfield County Business Journal, WAG Magazine, and electronic newsletters to keep you fully informed. On this edition, we'll be chatting with Mark Fagan, a partner in Citrin Cooperman's White Plains, New York office. Mark also is a member of Citrin Cooperman's Executive Committee and the firm's Audit and Attest Committee. With more than 25 years of audit, tax, and business advisory experience, Mark serves clients in a wide range of industries, including technology, financial services, private equity, manufacturing and distribution, and construction. Mark's clients range from privately held middle market firms to larger, complex, multinational organizations. Mark, welcome to Corner Chats.
Thanks, Peter. It's nice to be back and talking to you about our M&D survey a year later.
Yes, and Mark, tell us a little bit about the survey and its significance for businesses of all types and sizes.
So, Peter, we're really excited about this survey. It's our second annual, and it is made up of respondents of 200 manufacturing and distribution companies across the U.S., anywhere from roughly 50 million in revenues to over $1 billion in revenues, with operations globally, but headquartered in the United States.
What were the highlights that you managed to accumulate in the survey of those 200 firms with respect to how COVID affected them and how they're coming out of the pandemic?
Yeah, well, Peter, if you remember, our first survey was in 2020, taken in June, which was really just into the depths of COVID. And this one was taken in April of 2021. So as we were rounding the corner, hopefully finishing our COVID experience, what was really interesting was that only 7% of the respondents had a significant decline in revenue, and some 46% had a modest increase in revenue, and within that, there was probably 25 to 30% had a significant increase in revenue. So the M&D industry on a whole did pretty well during the COVID experience.
This seems to be contradictory to what the popular conception may be of what was happening to businesses during COVID. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it definitely was a tale of two different types of companies, even within the M&D sector. It really depends on what the ultimate customer, who the ultimate customer was, and was the company able to make a pivot to take advantage of the what was going on with COVID, whether it be selling masks or delivering directly to the consumer, or some of their supplies that related to COVID type of PPE, like for sanitizers, chemicals for sanitizers. Some of those companies did very, very well. Where there were others, obviously we're not talking about the rest of the hospitality industry. They were crushed when their restaurants were closed down. But our food distributors, if they were able to pivot from selling to restaurants to selling to shopping centers, then they did very well.
Were there major surprises that jumped out at you when you started to see results of the survey come in?
Well, one of the biggest was, only 7% were really hurt by the COVID, but as well, and probably what you're kind of have seen in the news lately, there was a tremendous amount of supply chain disruption. Between supply chain disruption and the amount of e-commerce sales, those were the two other surprising facts. So 46% of our respondents said that they now sell at least half and up to 75% of their sales using e-commerce. So e-commerce is here to stay. It's not just an add-on to revenue. And then, the other was, with COVID, 66% of companies added new products because of COVID, new products or services, and they expect to continue to offer those post-COVID.
That fact that the survey uncovered regarding online sales seems to be something that should resonate with every business, really, whether they've started with online or have been thinking about it, or for some reason are reluctant to jump in. I mean, that seems to be something which people really need to take notice of.
Yeah, and they also said their future growth was all about e-commerce and technology. Those are the two biggest factors to future growth. And it's interesting, Peter, they said that those are the two biggest factors, and technology was one of their biggest hurdles to future growth. So it's almost like they know they've got to invest in technology because it's a future, but sometimes it's not in their wheelhouse to be doing so.
What does Citrin Cooperman bring to the table from a business that suddenly realizes, hey, I'm missing out on something in the e-commerce world, or hey, I need to do some updating of our systems here. We're just falling behind in the way of technology. What does Citrin Cooperman bring to the table?
Well, our business transformation group, headed by Steve Ronan, that's really what he does for a living. He looks at a company's processes and procedures with an eye towards technology and evaluates where they are versus a best in class in their peer group, and how to get them there, including selecting an ERP system, including how to utilize that ERP system to the best of its capabilities. And also, cyber is something that's been in the news tremendously over the past several months. We've got a cyber department that is geared towards looking at what a company has as far as holes. So think about cyber for a second as a house. And are the windows open at night? Is the front door unlocked? Is there a screen? Maybe they're not. Maybe all the windows and doors are locked, but there's a screen door on the side that no one pays attention to that might be open, or there might even be the little flap for the cat to run in and out. We'll do vulnerability assessments and look to see where the open gaps are, those windows that are open, those ways for a bad guy to get into a company's customer records, supplier records, employee records, and really cause havoc, whether it be a ransomware attack, or also a phishing attack. So between the cyber department and our business transformation, there's a lot we can help with as far as technology.
Did the survey show anything about the way businesses are using data that they gather, either through electronic means or just analyzing paperwork that comes in? What did the survey show, if anything, about the use of analytics when it comes to finding out what the data can tell you about your business?
Yeah, so this is something that's really important to us because, as many of us know, the Industrial Revolution 4.0 is hitting the M&D market very hard. Disintermediation, which basically is connecting the manufacturer directly to the consumer, which that really COVID has really helped that accelerate. So you see the buying experience of the consumer completely changed. They're not going to the big box stores; they're waiting for it to come to them. So with that, the use of data analytics is a big part of our focus on the survey. And what it's shown is that the companies that are in excess of $250 million and more, the 250 million to $1 billion, they're more likely to be using data analytics to really understand the true profitability of their products and how they can get their product to the right place at the right time in a much more efficient way than companies under 250 million. They're not using the data analytics dashboards, the analyzing their overhead to products. to really understand their profitability like the bigger companies do and have been for some time. And that puts them, those 50 million to 250 million, at a disadvantage when going up against the larger companies.
Does the survey indicate whether there's still room in the business world for making decisions based on your gut instincts, or is there really a trend toward accepting data analytics as just a fundamental thing that all businesses need to do?
Great question. And, some of it depends on the size of a company. It might be the case that a $5 or $10 million company can get away with that gut feeling, and the business owner has known how to run this business for many years. But if you understand, that data is sitting in these companies' servers. And my first question would be, well, then why not utilize that data to prove your gut instincts? But also, especially as companies get bigger, it makes a bigger difference. For instance, let's say a company is generating 20 million, 50 million, 100 million in revenues. And let's say their operating profits are 1.5 million, and they're doing pretty good. They're making a living, they're sending their kids to college and so forth. That 25 or $30 million company, if you can take their profit and move it from 1.5 million to 2.5 million using data analytics, because if you look at all the best cost management studies, that's what Johnson & Johnson does, or Procter & Gamble does. And they save tenths of a penny, but they do it in billions of dollars of sales. Well, you don't have to be Johnson & Johnson to make savings out of a $12 million company or a $15 million company. And let's say that $1.5 million profit, free cash flow, goes to 2.5 million. And then you do a quality of earnings if you want to sell your company, and you find that, really you're making $3 million after you take out some of the family salaries that are in there and excess owner salary. So now that $1.5 million company, after investing some money in data analytics and doing some best practices, can show that they're worth 3 million. Well, if you go to sell that company at 5 times EBITDA, that's a $15 million sale, versus at 1.5 million, it's maybe only worth $8 million. So that's why it matters. If you want to ultimately have an exit on a multiple, every dollar of profit could mean 5 or 10 times that in a sale. So it really comes through when you look at it from that perspective.
Did the survey tell you anything about the attitudes that people have towards exit strategies? Are they getting serious in most businesses about having that very much in mind as they look at operations and examine such things as where to trim, how to save a couple of dollars here, how to add to the bottom line a couple of dollars there?
So business owners said in the survey about 47% are still looking to sell in the next 3 years. And like our survey last year, that was about the same. We'd looked at it a little longer horizon, 5 years. We looked at it in a 3-year horizon. And like I said, 47% are looking to sell. M&A has been a very hot market, even during COVID, surprisingly, for M&D. So the selling is definitely on their mind. And the better they can make their business look, then the more multiples they're going to get and the higher price they're going to get.
Is that really part of what Citrin Cooperman can do for a business, is increase its value?
Yeah, we do that in several different ways. There is, before the sale, we look to help a client with best practices, like understanding product profitability, having best practices in corporate governance, financial reporting, being able to close your books in a timely fashion over 15 days, increasing the profitability and understanding how you make money. That's one way. And then when you get closer to the transaction, our transaction advisory services, headed up by Sylvie Gadant, comes in and takes a look, and it's very popular now, the sell side qualities of earnings. What it does, it gets a company ready to go out to the market, and it shows the strengths of the company, and if it identifies weaknesses of the company, it can do that before a potential buyer comes in, so you can fix it if possible. It looks at what your normalized earnings would be after the owner leaves, maybe after you get some of the things that are maybe not as important to a buyer, those expenses out of the P&L, and it understands and reports on the maximum free cash flow. But it also looks at exposures to state and local tax, and a buyer would be very interested in that. And then we make sure that you have the right team in place, the right accountants, which obviously we're there and ready to go, and also the right attorneys. And what's really important for a transaction is the investment banker. That team is going to take your business out to market and out to sale, and really important to the success of the ultimate transaction.
Did the survey show anything about the hurdles that businesses feel they're going to be facing as we come out of the pandemic?
Yeah, the biggest is technology. They also feel that e-commerce and this new way of doing business are the most important aspects for them to become an expert at, because they think that modeling and selling directly to the consumer from the manufacturer, utilizing Amazon as part of your sales partner is part of the future, and that selling e-commerce is really the way that most people are looking to get their product out there.
How does a business go about adopting some of the things that Citrin Cooperman would be promoting? For example, how do you, as a practical matter, deal with your technology shortcomings? How do you deal with setting up the processes that you would need to make sense out of all the data you're collecting? Did you learn anything in the survey about business attitudes toward approaching and dealing with these fairly fundamental issues?
Well, yeah, what we learned was the companies that do best adapting to change, which includes moving to e-commerce, which includes dealing with a crisis like COVID or the 2009 financial crisis. There's certain characteristics of a company that make them a higher level of success. One is they've got a balance sheet, or if they've got a balance sheet that can take some body blows. So what that means is every year they don't just strip out all the earnings and give it to the owners, that they have some reserves left to be able to utilize when maybe you have 3 or 4 months of negative profits. That's really important, a strong balance sheet. The next is to be able to look at data, analyze data, and make decisions on it, and then execute on those decisions. So the companies that waited around and couldn't make a decision or couldn't implement that decision, they didn't do well. Even if you are maybe not making, even if you made the wrong decision, you'll find out about it quickly after you try to implement it, and then you can pivot off of that, but you'll have learned something from that decision. Making a decision is better than not making a decision. So that was important too. And then another was having a strong leadership team that had a strong culture to be able to communicate to the employees. And there were some really tough communications that had to go on with, I'm sure, with the respondents from our survey, but also the clients that, you know, we dealt with around our practice and our geographies, because we had many that had to lay off many people, but they had to do it quickly. So those are a few of the characteristics that make a company successful, either dealing with a crisis situation or a significant change in their business model.
Did the survey give you any information or any leads that would enable you to do an evaluation of the true economic health of the various industries? You know, we hear a lot in the regular media coverage of the economy, of the politics, one side arguing its position on the economy, the other side arguing its position on the economy. Did the survey give you any clues as to what's really happening in the business world?
It did, and it really looked favorably on manufacturing and distribution. Again, unless you were selling into a sector that the customer base just evaporated because of COVID restrictions. You were shutting down concerts, and you were providing equipment for concert venues, or you were providing for airlines that just had their the amount of planes going around the country and around the world just got decreased, and so forth. Those were difficult, but for the most part, the companies that were distributing to the economy in general did pretty well. And after a few months it was probably from April until July, when everyone was trying to figure out what was going to happen in 2020. After that, it started picking up really robustly. So we've got a good economic engine right now, and all things are really pointing towards a continued increase in this recovery from COVID.
So did the survey give you any clues as to what the financial performance of businesses is? Is there a sense of optimism based on the numbers they're seeing?
Yeah, there definitely is a feeling of optimism. I think a lot of these companies in my sector felt relieved that they came out of COVID as well as they did. And there is a feeling that the economy is still continuing to recover. The amount of savings that the average consumer has accumulated over the past year, I think that's helpful and is going to be driving the recovery. So yeah, there's definitely optimism. But again, technology is going to be a key, and that's going to be something that's a little difficult for the low to middle market M&D company.
If I had just landed on this planet from Mars and stumbled across a copy of the Citrin Cooperman survey here, where would you point me in the survey? What do you think, if there is such a thing, is the most important thing to be gleaned from the survey?
Well, we haven't talked too much about supply chain. So I think that if you came down and wanted to start your own business, I think that you have to really understand that the success you're going to have is only as good as you creating a supply chain from source to the consumer that is as void of risk as possible, even to the extent of paying more for that product. So for instance, 47% of our respondents said that they were sourcing product differently now versus before COVID because of the disruptions that came out of China, because of the fact that a container that used to cost $2,500 to go from Beijing to New Jersey now went to $7,500 per container. And the time to book that container, meaning that to get it ready for shipment, went from 10 days to over 20 days. So the price of shipping tripled and the time more than doubled to market. That was incredibly disruptive to the business owner for M&D. So that is going to be something that's very important, and that technology is something that, as a business owner, you've got to be very in tune with and understand that your customers have a different buying experience now than and expect a different buying experience, including very friendly websites, the ability to bring it right to their home efficiently than pre-COVID. So those are two really big things in your whole supply chain that business owners have to pay attention to.
And for the survey itself, what do you see as the future for this Citrin Cooperman survey? Is it something, this is the second time you've done it. Is it something that's going to become kind of an annual project for the company that's going to produce benefits for your clients and would-be clients?
Yes, we definitely expect it to be an annual survey. We get a lot of excellent information out of it, and I think we're looking forward to what next year's survey is going to be and how people have changed because of COVID. What things from COVID are going to stick? Are people going to be working in the office 3 days a week versus at home 5 days a week, or is it going to go back to pre-COVID? Are manufacturing companies going to be really more directly aligned and connected to their consumer? So I think it's going to be very valuable for business owners to understand what the competition is doing and what their industry is doing. So yeah, looking forward to having this be annual and the insights that they're going to bring.
And based on the results of the survey from last time to the new survey, are there lessons that you are able to take away that may have changed your approaches, your way of thinking as to the needs of business owners and operators?
I think the difference between last year's and this year's is it certainly showed the resilience of these M&D companies to be able to get through what such a difficult time, the resourcefulness to be able to pivot and offer new products and services, and to be able to go from maybe 25% of their sales being e-commerce to as much as 75%. So it's really a testament to their adaptability.
And how would you sum up the content of the Citrin Cooperman Pulse survey for spring of 2021?
We were very happy with the survey. We spent a lot of time figuring out which questions to ask, and not to be too much of a completely COVID survey, but really to be, what are they doing? What are companies doing with data analytics? What are they doing with technology? What do they think about the future? What are the biggest risks to their business? So we were happy with the improvement from the first survey to the second. Every time you do this, you're going to learn more and more about how to ask better questions to get better responses. But we were very happy with the overall content of it and looking forward to starting to design it for next year.
And on that note, Mark Fagan, thank you so much for being with us on this edition of Citrin Cooperman Corner Chats. I'm Peter Katz of Westfair Communications. Take care. You can view and download the Citrin Cooperman Spring 2021 Manufacturing and Distribution Pulse Survey Report on Citrin Cooperman's website at the following internet address: https://rebrand.ly/2021 MD Pulse Report.